Hey guys, I wanted to tell you that I was so excited to do a podcast with my coach that we did it over Zoom. Traditionally, I like to do them in the studio or on location, but the content that you're going to see here, could not be waited for. These are some of the greatest concepts that have changed my life. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. Have the best day of your life.
Hello, guys, and welcome to the Real Estate Doctors podcast, where I am here to inspire, educate, and entertain you. Today, I'm definitely with my most important guest that I've had to date. We are going to inspire you, and it can be entertaining too. So today, I have my coach, Devin Bandenson. He is the man, and I'll let him explain what he does, but I want to tell you guys how important he is. And Devin, I'm sorry, let me just talk about you a little bit. So I just want you guys to know who you are present with right now, and whatever you are doing, you should stop what you're doing, and you are going to get the best podcast that you've heard in a long time. You have two amazing coaches that are big time into helping and sharing with people. So take some time to stop whatever you're doing and pay attention here. So let me tell you about Devin. So some of you know that, and a lot of you won't know that I belong to a men's mastermind group. It's called the Men of Means, and I created it with another gentleman, Robert, who's I've done a podcast with. And Robert had, we were doing one. I have a house in Naples, Florida, and we were doing one in Naples. And like last minute, Robert tells, was it last minute for you too? Yeah. All right. So Robert tells us, like, hey, I went to this event in New York, and I want to bring this guy to our mastermind, our Men of Means mastermind. He, obviously he's not free. He's going to be X dollars, and none of us. I mean, Robert is like, if Robert says it, I had no idea who you were. So none of us ever, okay, Robert, you think this is going to really be value to our group? Not a problem. Let's fly him in and blah, 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 blah. So the first, I don't even know if I shared this with you, Devin, like how I thought about this. I've shared it so many times. I feel like I spent 20 times saying it. And then we'll get it. So the first night, like before we came, Devin, you came to the house. You didn't stay in the house, but you came to the house. We had two houses. We had my house and my neighbor's, and we're sitting by the pool. And I think even smoking cigars. And, you start talking, and I'm sorry, but I'm from Philadelphia, so we always think we're like the redheaded stepchild of the Northeast. And I'm like, who is this New York guy? Talking, like a New York guy, and he's gonna teach me. And I was super skeptical. And you said, you basically prepped us that, like, listen, be ready to work tomorrow. It's no joke. And I was like, okay, I can respect that. Let me see what this guy's got. But I was super skeptical. So we started at 8 o'clock. I remember my couch. I remember where I was sitting on the couch, and you were in the living room. And I think it was by 8:15, I was crying. Like, guys, I'm not lying. I was crying. And I remember saying to myself, did he pull some Oprah Winfrey move on me? Like, what happened that I just, and, I looked over at the other men, and they were all crying. And I was like, holy, like, what just happened here? You know what I mean? And so, we went through that exercise, and, not exercise. I went through a couple days of work with you. And at the end, I can talk a lot about this, but I want to introduce you before. I can talk a lot about just this event. But at the end, I was like, man, this guy, I have to have this guy coach me. And, I went out to you, you had finished, and I said, hey man, I want you to be my coach. And you were kind of like, yeah. You sure you do, and I'm like, nah, man, I want you to be, here's my email, send me an email. And I was like, okay. And then like, I sent you an email and, you didn't, I don't think you replied. Then I sent you a text and you were like, hey man, like you were busy. Well, let's get on a call in a couple of weeks. And I was like, man, no, I want you to coach me. And then I think I even said, like, listen, I'm gonna text or call you every day until
Yeah,
you
you did. Yeah.
so I chased you down and you became my coach, which I'll talk about that in more detail. So, what I want to tell you guys is like, Devin has changed my life significantly. I mean, more than any one person in my entire life has ever changed my life. And I really mean that. And I'm going to try not to cry on this episode. And Devin, my wife, I came back from that Men of Means retreat. And my wife was like, you're a different person. You're a different person. And I believe that I, became a different person after that weekend and because of you. So, let me let you say who you are and what you do. And then, I want to go back to like some of this breakthrough stuff that I had in the first event, but thanks.
100%. First of all, Jay, man, Dr. J, as I call you, I really, really am grateful to be here with you and all your listeners listening in. So I just want to acknowledge you for having this platform, but also acknowledge all the people listening, taking the time to get value, because those are my people, right? The ones who want to grow and develop and make an impact on the world. So, I can introduce me, but I just want to share to the listeners that like this guy who I call Dr. J, you guys call the real estate doctor. What I really admire about him so much is that the guy puts in the work. A lot of people talk a good game, and he's a guy whose audio matches his video, right? It's like what he says is matches, what he's doing, right? And it's been really, really inspiring from that day when we met in the Men of Means and in that group to see, your growth, development, everything you've been able to create and the impact you're making. Because, what people don't see is behind the scenes, there's a lot of work that's done. Life shows up, there's some difficulties, there's things that we work through, and nobody's exempt from that. And what I love about you is you stay committed to the work, stay committed to a vision of being a service to people. So I just want to first acknowledge you, man. And it really, I don't do many podcasts. I haven't done them in a long time. But when you extended the invite, it was a no-brainer because that's how much I love and respect you, man.
I love you too, and I receive that. Yeah. That's one of the things I learned on that first things to receive it.
Right. And I can tell you a little about my story if that's helpful for the people of what I do and stuff. I'm, as you can tell, in New York, it's funny because the Philadelphia crowd seems to attract to me because they got the little brother syndrome, but we love them, right? Matter of fact, my best friend, one of my best friends is a guy named Chris Doris, and he claims Philly. But I always tease him because he really grew up in South Jersey, right? And there's this weird thing that the South Jersey guys do. They think they're close enough, and then they become super Philly guys. So I got love for the Philly guys and my man CD and Dr. J. I grew up in New York, born and raised, and just like anyone else, and one of the things about my story is, everybody's gone through something in their life, right? And don't compare people's stories, right? Because, I could have went through something that seemed like it was traumatic and it could seem big to someone. But, someone who goes through like just their parents divorcing could be just as traumatic, right? So, you know, I grew up born and raised. I played ball, played basketball. That's kind of like, you know, what I came up doing. Um, and you know, about my father taught me how to play ball. He was like my role model, you know, like my, you know, and I really got into, I played in Rucker Park, all the best, you know, all the best places to play. But what I learned in that is I learned kind of, he taught me things about life, about leadership, about, you know, being part of a team, you know, to as you were growing up. So sports was really, it kept me out of trouble many times, or most trouble. And but it also taught me a lot of life lessons. And when I was about 13 years old, my grandmother passed away. And my father took it really hard. And you know, he started turning to drugs and he started smoking crack. And by 14, he had turned our house into a crack house. So when I was coming home from school, you know, I couldn't bring kids home from school because it was like, you know, and I remember I had a lot of resentment at the time. And there was like, how could my father choose this over me? And it only took years later to realize when I was doing the work, and just like anyone in your life, it's like everyone's doing the best they can with the thinking they have. Right. So it took me years of this work to realize later to not forgive my dad, because the forgiveness wasn't about him. It was about freeing myself up. But it was like I realized that everyone's doing the best they can with the thinking they had. And if I had the same thinking as him, I'd do the same thing. So I share that because no matter what you're going through in life, sometimes we gather resentments or have expectations for people. If you just realize that people are doing the best they can with the thinking they have, it will free you up, right? So the good thing that came out of that at that time was I made a promise at 15 years old. And I said, when I become a father, I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to do a better job than my dad. Like, you know, and so, you know, when our daughter was born, I was young. I'm not pretty young. I was 23 coming out of college. And, you know, that was my life. At the time, I was working in the nonprofit world, creating programs for what they used to call at-risk youth. I didn't like their names, so I changed their name to At Hope Youth. And then I started developing programs. I developed the first time fatherhood program that got national recognition because I learned that, you know what I need to teach? You teach the thing you need to learn the most. So I need to learn about fatherhood, so I'm going to create fatherhood programs. And I was in this nonprofit for years, and I was always a community guy. So when I came, I got a college scholarship in North Carolina. I came back. They used to give you 13 pairs of sneakers. Didn't make sense to me. So I was the guy who would give out sneakers in the neighborhood, run basketball tournaments. I would have my grandmother, like the old people in the neighborhood, they would cook the food for the events. I'd have the young teenagers DJing, and I have like the 10-year-olds selling water. So I was always into like community, like really bring the community together, and I loved it. And I got in this nonprofit, and I quickly, you know, went through the ranks and became the director of all the programs. Um, and it was good. I really loved serving the community. I was in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. And then what happened was, while I was there, I was big into leadership development. So anytime the HR team had coaches come in, leaders, leadership development, I signed up. Like I really wanted to become the best leader I could be. And what happened was I got a promotion, and it went from, now I'm in the corner office on Midtown Manhattan. So I get promoted, 6-figure job. It's like really nice corner office. 5 minutes into that promotion, I realized this is the biggest mistake I ever made in my life.
Really?
Right? Yeah, because it wasn't doing what I love doing. It wasn't serving the community I was doing. It was like a lot of office politics. There was a lot of victim mentality in there. The same time, I was going through what they call a difficult divorce. Now, you know, this is, you know, I'm from New York, so I don't know about you guys. Like, you guys can understand what a difficult divorce is. This is before I traveled to California, and I heard this thing called conscious uncoupling. It wasn't none of that. It wasn't no conscious uncoupling. It was difficult divorce, right? And so, and so at the same time, this guy did this leadership training named Jason Womack. And he comes to me, he's from California, and at lunch he says, "Hey man, something about you." And I'm looking at him with a skeptical, like the Philly guys, New York, kind of like skeptical mind. What's this guy mean? Kind of like how you were skeptical with me when I came to the thing. And he's like, "No, let's stay in touch." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. Like this guy's not going to stay in touch." So he stays in touch. He sends me a couple books, and then a couple weeks later, he invites me to this place in an email called OJAI California. That's how it's spelled, OJAI California. And he says, "Hey, I want to go, I want you to come out here. It's 3 days. Just find a way out here. I got you." And at the time, I'm going through this difficult divorce, and I have what they call scarcity mindset. She's going to take everything. I'm going to eat ramen noodles the rest of my life, and not that chic ramen you guys do now. I don't know if any of your
I
listeners,
know.
right? You remember
like
the
it.
packets of ramen? You needed like a hammer to break it up
Yeah.
and then put it in
That's
the
how I
water,
would,
right?
dude. Hold on, I just gotta say, I used to crunch them and just microwave them, like
Yeah, a microwave.
in a microwave. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That's
Now,
it.
I'm like crazy.
So, and this will be valuable for people because we've all been here. So I'm thinking short term, scarcity mindset. She's going to take everything. I'm going to eat ramen noodles. So he invites me to California. And at the time, I'm tight. And I say, this is only in 2 weeks. I can't afford 500. I can't put out $500 for a plane ticket to LA, blah, 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 blah. And I wake up 4 days later, right? Actually, I woke up every day, but 4 days of waking up, I woke up and I said to myself, something in my gut said, if I don't do this, I may regret this the rest of my life. I may live what they call a default future. Like if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I wake up, I look at the email. He recommends I stay in this hotel called the Lavender Inn. Now, I don't know about y'all, but in New York, if a place is called the Lavender Inn, it's probably charging by the hour, right? So I'm very skeptical now. So I call the Lavender Inn. It's obviously the spa thing, like it's this nice place. So I call the Lavender Inn. I say, "Hey, this is Devin," and I read the email. It says OJAI. I said, "This is Devin. This is my first time coming to OJ, California." And the woman says, "Devin, you sound like a nice guy. But OJ's that guy we don't talk about out here." Said, "This is Ojai." So I say, "Okay, my bad." So I book the place. I go to Ojai. We do this 3-day retreat. And I don't remember all the content of the retreat. I do remember the last day we're on Meditation Mountain, this place called Meditation Mountain. And Jason turns to me and looks at me and asks me 2 questions that shifted my whole life. The first question was, "What would you do if you weren't so concerned about money?" Because obviously I was giving off that kind of vibe, right? And then he asked the second question, and he said, "What would you do if you weren't so concerned what people thought of you?" So I looked, I said, "Wow, that's deep." So I looked at him and I said, "Well, what I do every day, the thing that lights me up the most is fatherhood." I had 2 kids at the time. I have 3 now and 2 bonus kids, but I said, I do fatherhood. I said, I'll do that every day if I could. I mean, I do it every day, but like if I could turn that into something, like I love it. I love talking about it. And then I looked at him in the most, humble New York kind of way. And I said, this thing called coaching that you're doing, I think you're good, but I think I could be one of the best in the world. And he looked at me and he said, "I love that." And he said, "Go build a business on that." So I knew something shifted in my life, Jay, that day. I got back on the plane and have you ever been, everybody's been through the point where they know their life has shifted. It hasn't shown on the outside yet, but inside, you have a perspective like, "Oh, wow, I see a whole new possibility for my life." And on the plane, I made a promise. I was making promises from 15 about being a father. On the plane, I made a promise. I said, "This weekend transformed my life." I said, "So when I get a chance to create a weekend where people can come and I can help transform their life, I'm going to always make it accessible. I'm not going to overprice. Like, I know I could charge a lot more for what I do on my weekends, but I'm going to make it accessible." And that was the seed that I planted for my game changer experiences that ended up coming into fruition 2 years later. And then I got home and I just did an event. right? Because they said, what do you got to do? Get into action. So I created an event where I was speaking. Is this good, Jay? Should I keep going with the
Well,
story? Yeah. You want me to pause?
yeah, I mean, you know, that's a good story of how you got into coaching.
Yeah.
But, you know, I can't say but. And, you know, can you just explain? I guess, you know, I wanted you to be a little bit more like, you know, you know, you're the go-to
I got you. I
coach.
got you.
So give me
I
a
got you.
little, just give me 2 minutes of formality, and then we'll keep it moving. You know?
All right. The reason why I did that is because I remember I was in a room with Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss wrote the 4 Hour Work Week. And I went to Tim Ferriss. I said, Tim, when are you going to tell people that it took you 20 years to create the 4 Hour Work Week? Because people are caught, oh, I'm gonna have a 4 Hour Work Week, but don't think there's years to it. So sometimes I like sharing the whole story so they know I started with nothing, right?
Yeah.
But you know,
Well,
fast
I mean,
forward to
so
today.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt. Did I thought you were going to go into some of the game changer stuff, which I want to talk about because I have personal experience too.
Yeah.
You know, just give us 2 minutes.
I got you, man. So basically today, right? I created this event. Someone videoed this event, and then I get a phone call, and it was TED Talks. So my second professional gig, they paid me to go to Boca Raton and speak in front of 15,000 people. And the lesson here is I just got into action. I created an event, you know, I invited people, someone videoed it and saw it. So that was like my first professional gig that I spoke at, and I made it up. Then I got a call, and my second professional gig was to do a TED Talk. I did a TED Talk in Boca Raton in front of 15,000 people. From that point, I started developing my coaching career. This is years ago. And today, you know, they call me the go-to mind coach of the NBA. So I've worked with a lot of athletes in both the National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball. I just came back from the Paris Olympics. About 5 of my clients were working down there in the Paris Olympics. So I went and supported the Olympics. I work with some of the most well-known business owners in the world, entrepreneurs, some people you've heard of on TV. And I'm the call they make. Like, I'm the secret weapon in a lot of people's lives. Like, I didn't get into this to be famous. I got into this to really make a difference. So I'm really the first call that a lot of the top leaders in the world, entrepreneurs, athletes, sports teams call when they want to transform not only their mindset, but their way of being in the world so that they can really make an impact from mental, physical, spiritual, financial standpoint. That's why they call me. So that's how and the reason why I shared the story early was my message has always been the same. Like, I could come in and, you know, I got a lot of accolades, been on Good Morning America, been, you know, worked the Olympics and all that. But my message stays the same, is that if it can happen for me, it can happen for you. And I think it's an important message, right? Because a lot of times people think, oh, that's too far. That's too far to reach that. That's why I messed with Tim Ferriss when I met him and said, yo, Tim, like, when you going to tell them that? Because when people see it and say, oh, I'm just going to start a 4-hour work week, but don't put the work in, it's difficult. So that's kind of like where I'm at now. I'm grateful. I run a 3-day experience called the Game Changer Experience, which was, you know, started with the seed of being on that plane years ago. We've done 36 straight sold out events all over the world. We have a 97% success rate of delivering on the promise of the weekend. We do it in London, New York, California, Florida, parts of the UK, other parts of the UK. And that's kind of like where we're at today.
Okay. Now let me ask some questions. So some questions there's some concepts that you taught me that, you know, I say some on a daily basis, some on a regular basis. And, you know, I want you to share, you know, what these concepts mean to you. So like the first one I'm going to start with for me and you is what's on your shirt, which is, it's the best day of my life. Right.
Yeah.
So I say that every day, multiple times a day. I say that at the end of every time I do anything.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've made a couple reels explaining it, but what does it mean to you? Where did it come from? And obviously I got it from you. And this is
Yeah.
also part of my skepticalness of you. I'm like, who's this guy saying today's the best day of his life?
Yeah, a lot of people go unconscious. And what I mean by that is we get asked the same questions every day, and people don't actually think of the question. They just go in autopilot, right? And one of the tenets of my work is, and we won't go too scientific, but like the study of neuroplasticity, neuroscience, has shown us that there's patterns of your brain. And that's what we do. We get it. How you doing? Good. How's your day? Fine. Right. I asked my son, if you ask the same questions, you get the same answers. How was school? Good. What'd you do? Work. You don't get any new things. So you create patterns in your brain that just go on autopilot. And what happens is you become unconscious. So, I started thinking about this question, how you doing? When I was with my boy CD in Philly, and one day he said, be best damn day of my life. That's what he said. Best damn day of my life. And I said, man, I love how that sounded. I was like, gave it some thought. And I started saying, you know what? What if I train my brain to, when someone asks, to say, this is the best damn day of my life? Because science has shown that your brain will begin to look for evidence of that, right? A lot of people wake up, they break a cup, or they stump their toe, they say, I'm going to have a what? Bad day. Then what happens is the brain looks for evidence. They get on the parkway, there's a lot of traffic. Every day there's traffic. But because they said, I'm going to have a bad day, the brain looks for it. So when I train my brain and someone says, how you doing? And I think, and I say, well, today's actually the best day of my life. I am training my brain to look for that. It's like Gandhi. Gandhi said, when people were talking about God, Gandhi said, if you can't see God in the next person you're talking to, you'll be looking for him or her the rest of your life. Right? So for me, it's like best day of my life. If I can't see tenets of the best day of my life today, I'll be looking for it the rest of my life. It'll be a pipe dream. So I train my brain to look for the evidence. And that's why, that's how this came about.
Man. And that just one thing, I think I'm probably going to say this 10 times, like that changed my life too, because, first off, the reaction you get from people when you say that is unbelievable because nobody says that, and you never, like I used to say before you, I used to say I should say that, there's a pre-Devin, after Devin, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So before you, I used to be like, same shit, different day, another dollar, and none of it was positive, and none of it, I always talk about how, and how words affect you. And, like I'm not only affecting myself when I say that, I'm affecting the other person there, like people light up when you go, it's the best day of my life. They want to know what's going on. So,
and a lot of times they'll say things like, what happened? Like, what happened? And I often look at them and say, that's the thing. Nothing happened. Nothing needs to happen for me to create this as my best day of my life.
Wow.
Nothing needs to happen. And so for me, it's like our words create our world.
For sure.
And so you want to look at the language, because language is generative. A lot of people have language talking about, oh my God, it's only Monday. Just trying to get through to Friday. Thank God it's Friday. How was your weekend? Too short. And then they create a life that's just trying to get through. Man. Or they now we're getting into it. You see, we drop, we go early.
Oh yeah.
Or it's like, how are you? I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. And then their brain continues to look at stress, overwhelmed. You have something called the reticular activating system. If I tell you today, hey, I'm thinking about buying a Porsche, you'll go out in Aruba and you'll start to see Porsches you've never seen before. because your reticular activating system starts looking for the evidence of that. It's like the old game Punch Buggy, right? Punch Buggy Red, Punch Buggy, right?
Yeah.
Like your brain will see it. So you want to be careful. Thoughts, if I was to tell, if someone was listening to pull out a paper, I would say, pull out a paper and remember this. Thoughts, and then put an arrow. Turn to emotions. Emotions turn to behaviors. Behaviors turn to results. And a lot of times people are trying to like change behavior, modify their behavior, but you're 3 steps down. The way to really transform your life is to go to the source, which is your thinking. Transform your thinking, and that comes out in your language and your emotions, and you'll transform your life.
Okay. A lot of this stuff hits home. So in my coaching, you know, when I started with you, I was I was still working a lot, and I hated Monday.
Yeah.
I hated it. And you know, you worked on me with that. And you know, it got to the point like I'm a big, you know, journal guy, and
Yeah.
every day I write down, almost every Monday now, I write, I'm grateful for Monday opportunities. Like, you know, this is the day that I actually have the opportunity to generate income and help people in my life. But if you stay on this mindset of like, oh, it's Monday, that's how you feel all day. And, you know, you were talking a couple of things I want you to touch on that you said here. One is, you know, just in general, language. Like I find myself, I hear now, you know, none of us are perfect. I hear now when I say something I shouldn't say, like, you know, it's not the right word. Like you have bench warmer words, you can say them in a second. But you know, I can't tell you, it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. Just the way somebody talks, I know that is somebody I don't want to be around, and that person can never truly be happy in life the way that they're talking. So talk a little bit about how important, because you went from, you know, mind, and then you were deliberate in your, like, in your language. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So all my athletes and business owners, we start with their thoughts, the low grade thoughts, and rewiring it. And if you look at anyone at the top of any industry, Warren Buffett, Djokovic, Serena Williams, like you never hear them like talking discouragingly about themselves, right? It's like they're all learning. Hey, I know that maybe wasn't my best today, and I learned a lot. I'll be better tomorrow, right? They're always training their brain to see the learning in it. So there's a story. You ever heard of Jack Nicklaus, one of the greatest golfers of all time?
Yep.
Here's an example. Jack Nicklaus was doing an interview, and there was reporters in the room, and Jack Nicklaus starts saying, "I've never missed a putt within 10 feet or less." And he's going through this talk, and he's saying, "I never missed a putt." And there's a reporter in there who's followed Jack his whole career. It's like, what is Jack talking about? He missed 3 putts under 10 feet in the last 2 months. He missed a putt last week under 10 feet, and he's gone. So the reporter finally says, hey Jack, are you all right? Like, you know, last week there was this, you were at Sawgrass, you missed this putt under 10 feet. Jack looks at him and says, "Sorry, sir, you're mistaken. I've never missed a putt within 10 feet or less." So the reporter's confused. The interview goes over, and then the reporter goes to Jack Nicklaus's manager, and he says, "Is Jack losing it? Like, you know, he's missed putts under 10 feet." And the manager looks at the reporter and says, "Hey, what's your handicap in golf?" And the guy says, "I got about a 15 handicap." And he says, "So you're telling me you want the greatest golfer in the world to think like you?" Right? See, because the great ones don't think like that. They train their brain to be like elite in what they see and what they do. So there's always opportunity. And they don't let their language to leak out into victim mentality. So your words literally create the world you walk into. See, you're a J. You're a Dr. J because someone gave you the name, and you're the real estate doctor. Someone gave you a name and enough people agreed. If you woke up tomorrow and said, I'm Muhammad Ali, it would be a whole nother world that opened up for you. You guys are in real estate. If I want to buy a house and I go buy a house with my wife, we drive by a block and we see a house and the words say for sale. We pull over, a whole world opens up. That's where we can have the family barbecue. That's where the kids will be, right? I come down the next week, same house, different language, sold. It's a whole different world.
Wow.
So our words create the world that we live into. How we can upgrade our language is to start by upgrading our thoughts. So you ever been around someone and you get around them and you're like, man, they don't even have to say much. You're just like, they got a positive vibe. Like, I want to know more about them, right? Like
Yep.
Their energy, their vibes, whatever it is. And then you get around another one, like a woman, and you get around her and you're like, I got to get the heck away from her.
Yeah.
Right? Now, neither person is right, wrong, good, or bad. It's just that the person with the high energy frequency is spending more time on high grade thoughts, less judgment of self, less judgment of others, and you can guarantee that they're telling them higher grade thoughts and language to themselves. The woman that you're like, I got to get away from, you can guarantee that she's spending more time on low grade thoughts, more judgment of self, more judgment of others. And what happens is your brain, remember, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, it creates an energy field. It's a way of being, right? So when you're always thinking low grade thoughts and you're like, oh, doom and gloom and the world's coming to an end, it's going to affect your energy field in which you walk into rooms and people will feel it. So if you want to change, we want to transform who you are being in the world.
Well, that's like a tee up for another concept.
I'm going in.
Have a doobie, but listen, this is what I want. Like, this is the powerful stuff. So, go ahead. So I won't be, I won't, I'm the student again. So talk.
Well, most people, you get these blogs, right? And they're like 7 ways to move to Aruba and live your best life. 3 ways to have a happy marriage. And all these, everybody used to go after these blogs, the do's. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. And what they found was they'd start doing the things, but it wasn't sustainable. They'd fall off. So most people, if you have a piece of paper out there, you want to write do, have, be. If you just tell me what to do, then I'll have what I want. Then and only then will I be blank. Happy, joyous, free, wealthy. Or have, do, be. If I just have the right partner, then I'll do the right thing. Then I'll be a good husband, wife, blank. So most people are in a life where they're trying, just tell me what to do, or I need to have the right circumstances. Do, have, be, or have, do, be. The problem with that is those methods have left people exhausted. How many times have you been trying to do the business a little better? How many times have you been, trying to get the right collaborators and have the right team around you? And it hasn't been working. Because what it's done is it's rendered you a default way of being, meaning you're at the expense of those things. Mm-hmm. So the correct order is be, do, have. So I have a woman, first female store. She's going to be the first female in storage. She started in the 90s, billionaire this year.
In what?
Yeah, storage. Like she
estate.
went into storage and you know what happens? You create storage and then you become your own bank. You become your own investment company, right? So she has all that going on. She comes to me and says, I want to take my company from 700 million to $1 billion. My first question in coaching isn't let's get to strategy. what do we need to do? My first question to her is, who do you need to be a person who takes their company from 700 to $1 billion? Because the person who got here ain't going to get you there. It's another level. NBA guy came to me, was averaging 15 points a game. Said, Dev, I want to average 22 and make the All-Star team. It's a whole different money level. My first question wasn't, okay, let's go to the court and get the drills and figure out what to do. Because all the drills are the same. There's nobody who has secret drills in the NBA. So it wasn't about the doing. And it wasn't about him having the right team. My first question was, who do you need to be a guy who averages 22 points a game? Because the guy who's averaging 15 ain't going to be the guy who averages 22. So he was like, I got to be someone who's committed, who makes this my number one priority. Guy gave up Friday nights. He changed his whole nutrition, made the All-Star team.
Wow.
We worked on the being, right? The thoughts, emotions, behaviors, results. First female storage billionaire by the end of this year, she'll reach that because of who you're being. So a lot of people get caught up in, they get online, they get these strategies. Strategy is good, right? You need strategy. I'm not saying you don't, but it's second. Because that's why the gym doesn't work for most people. The gym isn't rocket science. By this point, you know what you could do to get in shape. So it's not the doing that gets you in shape. It's like, am I being someone who's committed, makes it non-negotiable when my alarm goes off to go to the gym? When you change that, then the doing becomes easy.
So, okay, I think I was going to ask the question, and I must have heard this 20 times in different arenas with you. And every time I hear even more, it gets deeper. That's what's great about coaching. Some people will say, well, haven't you heard everything that Devin could possibly tell you? And it's not just, sometimes you're not ready for it. You're not at the season of your life to hear it. And sometimes we all can't just contain, and sometimes it went another step deeper. And every time I talk to you, I get how deep you are. The concepts are life-changing even on the outside, but they're deep and they're well thought out. So my question was going to be because I talk about this BDU have all the time too, but how do you be if I want to be a real estate mogul? How do I be a real estate mogul?
So you want to train your brain when you go and leave your house that you're not, I'm going to be a real estate mogul one day. When you walk out of your house, you're training your brain. What would a real estate mogul think, do, be right now? And you start living into that. That's why I tell people, buy the first class ticket before you can afford it. Because you want to sit in there and understand what it's like to be in first class. So here's an example. Let me give you a good example of this. How do you just be it? I'm a best-selling author. Before I was a best-selling author, I was writing these blogs, and they were kind of shitty blogs, right? Because I didn't like writing blogs, right? I was writing because they told me when I first started, you got to write blogs. And I just write blogs, and you ever write something, you're just happy, you got it over with, and you press send, and you send it out. And one of my clients was a triple education major, and she called me, and she was buttering me up, and I'm like, what are you buttering me up for? Clients, we don't do that, right? She's like, well, Devin, those blogs you're sending out? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I have a double education major, and if you wanna send them my way before, and I can look them over, right? I will. And I'm like, so you're telling me my blog sucks? She's like, no, right? Even at that point, when people were asking me, what am I? I said, I'm one of the best coaches in the world, and I'm a best-selling author. And I kept living into being a best-selling author, speaking on it, being in it, acting like it, having book releases, And eventually my book came out. I was a best-selling author. So once you train your mind, then you need to make a declaration. And the thing about declarations is when people hear declarations in America, they think usually of one thing. What do they think of, Jay? Declaration of
Independence.
Independence. Now, here's what people need to know. There was no independence when they declared it. They declared independence and then lived into it. That's being. They were being it before it was actually there. The go-to mind coach, all the guys in the league call me that, right? In the NBA and MLB. That name didn't come from Indeed.com. I didn't look up, whoa, let's get right. I made a declaration, lived into it. People saw it, knew that's who he's being. Boom. Go-to mind coach.
Wow.
Last example. Early on in this work, this is for people who like, so that's the business part. Who do you need to be? Declare it, live into it. You study the greats. Success leaves clues. So you got the real, if you want to be a real estate doctor and you're around the real estate doctor, right? Then you want to look at, listen, what does he do? How does he be, right? Success leaves clues. And they always say, don't be a copycat. And I always say, it depends on the cat you're copying. Because if I want to be like this person, then I want to do what they do. So for instance, in music, Chris Brown or whoever never says, I copied Michael Jackson. They always say, I was influenced by them, right?
It.
Which means they took what they had and then made it their own. I'm getting fired up now. So here's another thing for just regular everyday life. I was going through that difficult divorce and I pick up my son every Friday. And, you know, every time I saw her name, you ever see like the phone ring and then you get a little nervous, like, oh man, this is bad. And then this is years ago. And I pick him up and then I was thinking that I wanted to change. Oh, here's a distinction. Change is different than a breakthrough.
Mm.
Change looks like this, right? A little, but the problem with change is dependent on your past. You know you're into change when you're trying to be a little better version, a little different, better or different from when? From the past. Mm. So what happens with change is you go up and you make these increments, but eventually when things get tough, you may default back. So when you're looking for change, there's nothing wrong with it, but just know you have no future. All you have is a recycled past. Because even if you become a little better version, a little different version, you're being better and different than the past. There is no future. You're just recycling a better, a different version than the past. That's not what a breakthrough. So I'll go to the other story in a minute, but I had a client, he was the biggest, he ran the most gyms in America, like workout gyms, like these things with spas in it and all that. And he used to say, Devin, I oversell my gym memberships by 40% every January. You know why they do that, Jay?
Yeah, because
Right?
nobody's there in March.
Right, because people looking for change. New year, new me. And so you go to the gym on January 5th, you can't even get a machine. You're going to be there for 2 hours. 78% of New Year's resolutions are broken by February 18th.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So you go into the gym February 25th, you in and out in 40 minutes.
That's crazy.
So the reason is because people are looking for change. So they'll start going in January and then it's like, this is too busy, and they default back. When I work with people, we look for a breakthrough. A breakthrough has nothing to do with your past. I don't even, like, your past doesn't need to be your future. Matter of fact, if my past was my future, I wouldn't be here. So a breakthrough is literally going into the future and pulling the future from the future into the present. Has nothing to do with your past. Here's an example. Going through a difficult divorce, I'd go pick up my son. I was looking for change, and I'd say, I'm going to be a little better, more integrity this time. I'm going to be a little more patient. And I was doing it for a minute. And then eventually I'd pick up my son, and I had a voice that said, I can only take so much. And I'd default, and we'd have an argument. Until one day I'm in the shower, and I had a breakthrough. This ain't no more difficult divorce. I'm going to create myself being as the best ex-husband ever. That was not from a past. It was like there was nobody in Queens, New York who was modeling that. It was me going into a future, creating it out of thin air. The definition, I'm just dropping it now. The definition of abracadabra is from my words I create. That's the literal definition of the magic of abracadabra. From my words, I create. So from my words, it's like best ex-husband ever. So what happened was I'd go pick up my son now, and I train my brain. I'm going to be the best ex-husband ever. How would he listen to this? I changed her name on my phone from her name to pray for her. So every time it rang, it just said pray for her. And I just either laugh or pray for her.
Wow.
Right? So I would keep picking up my son. So 8 months of this, my ex-wife didn't change what she was doing, but how I related to it just shifted. I just keep picking up my son. About 9 months later, in summer, she's with her friends. Now, anyone who's been through a divorce knows picking up your son, ex-wife with friends could be dangerous. So I go pick up my son. She calls me over, and she goes to her friends. I want to introduce you to someone. Guess how she introduced me?
I know the story.
I want to introduce you to the best ex-husband ever. Now, here's the thing. In those 9 months, I never said those words to her. I never said, I've created myself as the best ex-husband ever. I trained my brain, and my actions followed. And just like that force field that we talked about earlier with the positive person, she felt the experience of what the best ex-husband ever looked like. And she said those words, not me, because I chose a way of being and I lived into it. I declared it and lived into it. I declared it and trained myself to live into it. And that's a lot of the work we do with people. We have people who went from zero to multimillionaires. We got someone who's a multimillionaire to a billionaire. We got, like, there's no one who comes in my orbit that we don't like. If your commitment reaches mine, miracles happen every time, guaranteed. And so, yeah. And I even got an agreement, people, and that's why I have, like, my one-on-one coaching is a small group. It's, a big investment, 6-figure investment. And I only work with a select few. That's why I make my game changer weekends accessible. It will never increase in a lot of price. You will get 9 months of coaching in 3 days and have your life transform. It's the most transformational weekend on the planet. And the reason why we've sold out 36. And I'm not saying that it's not a bragging thing. It's just, I live in as is reality. That's just what the feedback has been. And,
well, hold on. I want to speak about that, because it's definitely something that I think if somebody wanted to get a taste, not everybody can afford 6-figure, coaching. And if somebody wanted to get a taste of you, I mean, it's not just a taste. It is like immersion, It really immersion. And you coached me. And then after that, I went to one in London. I went to one in New York. And again, I learned something new every time. And not only, let me just make the room for people. Like, it's a 3-day event, and there's usually like 40 people.
40 people.
40 people.
Keep it intimate.
Yeah, it's 40 people. And so every one of these events is unique because the people are unique. That's number one. And the people's circumstances are unique. And even if it's the same people, what I learned in my life is, like, we all have different seasons. Like, me this year is different than me last year, Yeah. So it's intense. Like, Devin doesn't let you play. Like, you're not, I'm not going to give away some things, but you are going to be on time and you are going to do the work. But people go there to do the work. That's the thing. And I can tell you that you will end that weekend a changed person, and you will have some connections with other people that you've done some really personal work with, that you have a connect, like I have connections with, I mean, if I went to 2 game changers with 80 people, I still talk to 50. I still
Yeah.
talk to 50.
Special group. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody, you know what I like about, like, some people, now there's all these webinars and stuff like that's online. And what I like about, sometimes people are like, oh, would you go to a Tony Robbins seminar? And I'm like, yeah, I've been to Tony Robbins seminar, and I'll go to another one. And why would you go to another one? The people are different every time, so I'm going for the people. Anybody that wants to be at a Devin Game Changer event is somebody I want to be around. They want to do the work. They're working on their life. They're going to be successful. If they're not, and listen, Devin, look, there's people that are down down at the bottom when they come there, and I've watched them completely, their lives changed, and it's unbelievable. So, one, it's because people change, and two, it's just sometimes one concept can
Yeah.
can be a game changer. And so, I definitely, after this pod, we'll put in links to, how you can connect with your game changer. But are you on a time thing? Because I know we're at like an hour.
No, we can keep going if there's more. One thing about Game Changer, you're right. People come from, what I love about Jay about that is people come from all walks of life, right? You'll be in the room with the single mom or single dad in there, all the way to somebody you've seen on TV playing professional sports or someone. And there's no what I call big I's or little U's. Everyone's on equal playing ground. That's what I love about the Game Changer. And from that time I went to Ojai, I made a promise that it was going to be accessible for people like me. Because if it was highly priced to go to Ojai, I would never have made it, and my life wouldn't be like it is. So the Game Changer, I always make reasonable for people to come in and experience. For what they get, the value is ridiculous. And we have so many stories, people transforming their relationships, their finances, their businesses. I remember there's a woman who came in, and she had an autistic son, and anyone who has children with autism, it's hard work, sometimes. And wonderful soul, and she comes to the Game Changer, and this talks to your point about the people in the room, like really, really amazing people. So she comes in, and I'm checking in and coaching with her, and I said, "What are you up to?" And she says, "Oh, well, I write this poetry about my journey as a mom and autism." I said, "Well, who's heard it?" Nobody. And she says, "So I want to be a poet." I said, "You already are. Right now, we're going to declare it. You're going to step into it. You willing to come and share your poetry with the people in the room? Come to the front." She never was in front of a room. She got nervous. She said, "You know what? I'm willing." So she shares her poetry. It's some of the most beautiful poetry I ever met. Not a dry eye in the room. People are a standing ovation. This was on Saturday. By Monday, we created, now in New York, they have a thing called the Nuyorican Cafe. Now, this is the number one spoken word place to be. And you can't just go. There's famous people who go, they have open nights, but this wasn't one of them. But we did something in that room with her that created her being center stage that Monday. So she goes center stage Monday, shares her poetry, and 20 Game Changer participants are in the audience with her. And now she writes poetry for all, in that world, and she's become pretty well known. Started from just a thought. It's
3 days.
In 3 days. And I could tell you stories for days. I had a guy lost his leg, came in, wanted to be the top. He wanted to be a speaker in the amputee community. He wanted to use his accident as a blessing. He comes in, we create him as, the top speaker in the amputee community. Within 3 months, he's on major stages, and he leaves the Game Changer more motivated about something else. He declares that he's going to do an Ironman with a prosthetic leg. We create it. You guys who come know about the domino. We won't share that now, but he comes through the line within 6 months. He finishes an Ironman and he has that game changer domino with him. Like there's stories of just miraculous things that occur every time. We have a 97% success rate. And, you know, in sports terms, you don't need to know sports to be there. But in sports terms, like day one is all about getting accurate about where in your life have you been playing not to lose. You know, in sports, when you're playing not to lose, you're like hesitant, you're fearful, you're going to make a mistake. And a lot of times we make more mistakes. So we really put that front and center. Where you've been playing not to lose. Second day, we create a vision for you, with you, of like, what would playing to win look like? So now it gets clear day two. Day three, it all comes together. Because I've realized that being in the zone, being in flow, the great ones play for the love of the game. So day three is like, what would playing for the love of the game be? If I showed up to my real estate for the like empire that I'm building for the love of the game, not like, oh my God, this client said yes or no, or this and that, and base it on that. It's like, nah, I'm the best at this. And I get to do this. So the transformation that occurs, as you know, Jay, in the 3 days is extraordinary, second to none.
It's extraordinary. So you know, we could go for hours and hours. I did want to kind of finish a conversation with something that you probably said to me, and probably said it in passing, and you probably say it I don't know if you say it all the time, but man, it really had an effect on me. So, you know, in the beginning, like, you know, I'm not going to say the first time I met you, but like in the beginning, you know, you'd be like, hey man, I love you, you know, I love you. And, you know, it just didn't sit right with me. Like my mom, it's hard for my mom to say, and me to say, I love you. And
most Philly guys, man, nah, just kidding. Most people.
Oh, but I got to be from California, you know, so just kidding. So, you know,
yeah, I
think one day I asked you, I said, man, how can you say you don't even know me? Like, you know, really.
Yeah.
And I want to say it because this is how I heard it. I may not say it correctly, but you said, listen, if people can go around hating people they don't know, I can go around loving people I don't know.
That's right. That's right. That's how I live my life.
Bro, for me, this is a drop the mic. Like this is a concept that changes the world that you live in. Just thinking this way. Like I don't have to go out here and listen, especially coming from Philadelphia or New York. You do have to walk down the streets and you're taught, like, you know, to be careful who you talk to and blah, 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 blah. And for you to come out of there with, you know what? I'm going to love people. Yeah. And that's what I choose to do. And if you can talk smack on the tabloids and I hate this and bad news this, then I can love. Yeah. Listen, it's nothing more than that.
100%.
Tell me how that came
to be. No, it's you said it perfectly, Jay. You know, it's like, you know, people go around and because they don't understand something, they usually end up judging it and hating it. And so they create these like us versus them, me versus you, you know, differences. And I don't see the world, you know, like that. And it's true. If people can go around deciding to choose, because it's a choice, like you said, hating people they don't know, I'm going to choose every day to love people I don't know. And so when I see people, you know, it allows me, you know, what we've lost sometimes, and you see this a lot in political world and just in the world in general, is like people don't have a high level of respect for other people's point of view anymore. Right? Like, so we judge people because they think different than us. Mm-hmm. But I know that people are just they're doing the best they can with the thinking they have, and their point of view may be different than mine. So I could disagree with someone's point of view, but I don't need to be disagreeable. But on top of that, not only am I not going to be disagreeable, I'm going to love you. you know, and that's how I look at the world. You know, I remember my son, he messed up in school. He made big mistake, bad choice. And he was like beating himself up so much. And he was like, Dad, you know, look, and I looked at him and I said, my man, let me tell you something. There is nothing that you could ever do that would have me stop loving you. And I just saw, I can get emotional thinking about my son. Like, I just saw his shoulders relax because he was just being human, man. And I look at the world like that. Like, even if there's people out there that are doing stuff that I don't agree with, I don't, you know me, I have boundaries on certain things, but I still love people through it. I think it's a world in which, you know, Mother Teresa, they said, are you going to go to the anti war rally? She says, I don't do anything anti. When it's a pro something, you call me.
Wow.
And so for me, I want to go into a world that isn't like fear-based for me. It's just like, I love people through. That's why wherever I go, I feel comfortable. And we just traveled all through all kinds of parts of the world. And, you know, I met my wife in Costa Rica, and they have a saying in Costa Rica called Pura Vida.
Yeah.
It's just pure life. And when I asked them out there, what does that mean? They're like, you know, Dev, how you guys sometimes think this is good, this is bad, death is bad. He says, it's just pure life to us. It's all good. And I think that the world will be a better place if we just infuse more love in it, man.
Yep. And you know what? This is the life that I want to live. I want to live a life like that. And thank you for loving me, man. I appreciate that. And guys, you know, listen, I could do this for hours and hours and hours with Devin, but I'm going to end it here. I will tell you, Devin, I also appreciate, man, that, you know, I can share you with my audience and with people. And, you know, you are a light in the world that needs to be shared. And, you know, I love that you're working on, like, the Game Changer is always an affordable situation. And now you have like an online thing. So if people are interested, you know, you can work with him online, and it's not going to kill the bank. But I will tell you guys, if anybody has personally, I talk to a lot of you guys personally, and a lot of people, you know, listen, you know, this guy is the best of the best. And, you know, man, I love you and I thank you. And, you know, everybody here, you know, as my wife coming by, hi, wife, you know, hi, baby. So,
well, I love you too. Thank you for noticing. And I just acknowledge you for like really bringing this to the world, bringing this information to the world, and being a stand for people, man. You make the world a better place, my brother.
Thanks, man. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching the Real Estate Doctor podcast. And everybody, have the best day of your life. Thanks.
Only always.
Thanks, Evan.